Hi, everybody, and welcome to our last seminar with Foto.no and Sony with Sandra Åberg. This will be a great seminar, guys. I hope you are tuning in live and not seeing this after the fact. We have been very lucky to get Sandra Åberg to have a seminar with us. She is an international fashion and wedding photographer based in Europe. Her work has been featured in magazines around the world like Vogue, Elle, and so on. She's known for her light ethereal images and navigate between high-end wedding and fashion to nature and adventure photography, so a well-rounded photographer. Sandra will explain how she works and talk about how she got her business to where it is today, and share some of the secrets to her success and fails. She'll also talk a bit about the gear she uses and how shooting the cover of Vogue took her to revise her entire life and return to what she truly loved. So with that, I'll give the word over to Sandra.
Hi guys, thank you so much. Super happy and thankful that we're here today with Foto.no, and I'll speak in English because I think everybody prefers that to Swedish or Danish to not add confusion to everything. Feel free to ask any questions that you want during this time. If you're live with us, do ask questions and we'll try to answer them all at the end, I think. Otherwise, you're always welcome to email or ping us on Instagram. And with me today is Joe, which is my partner.
Hello.
In life and in crime. So I really wanted to today to be here and kind of do something a little bit different and be real with you guys. And there's no one that keeps me more grounded than Joe, and also to kind of knows the ins and the outs of the business. So I think it's fair, even though it makes me stressed that he will give something away that I'd rather keep secret. But here he is, guys. So really, he's the one to ask all the questions to. Anyways, today we wanted to speak to you a little bit about like above and beyond is what we titled it. And we thought we'd go into sort of what we do and how we do it and how we got to where we are today. So I'll start with a little bit about me for those of you who do not know me. As you heard, I'm a wedding and fashion photographer. And my work has taken me really around the world to various places and to photograph people and amazing love stories and weddings. And my big dream was really always this aim, like throughout my career, it was always my goal was that I wanted to get on the cover of Vogue because that was my lifelong dream. And that was what I aimed for. So to really cut a long story short and show you a little bit about my work, you'll see it here as well. That moment finally came years later. I think we're 10 years in when I got the chance to shoot this cover of Vogue Japan, which was a huge opportunity and something I'm very, very grateful for. And it came to change my life in a way that I hadn't expected. So I realized shooting the cover of Vogue, which was my lifelong dream, it's what I aimed my career to do, because sort of combining the fashion and the weddings was my absolute go-to. And it turned out to be a bit of an end and a beginning for me. And it made me realize that what I'd worked so incredibly hard to achieve wasn't really giving me the satisfaction that I'd hoped for. And so I had to really revise and sort of look over my life again and say, all right, well, if this is your big goal, here it is. Now, are you happy? And since realizing this, that fancy magazine covers and this glamorous life wasn't at all what made me happy at the end. It was a pretty big moment, and I found that what I wanted was really to give people something, to really be of value and of service to people. And in that search, I think that's when I ran into Joe, who was a lawyer at the time, sick of his job. And together we kind of set out on this adventure and quest to find something that I think we both were missing. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that often gets misconstrued about you as a photographer is due to the fancy, luxurious images that you publish. You are often associated with something very glamorous, privileged, and I suppose that might make things look easy, but what is really behind the scenes of all of that is a hell of a lot of hard work, and it's gritty, hard and dirty work. And behind a lot of those pretty,
it's all pastel colors,
pastel dreamy images are ripped jeans and muddy boots and sore backs and bloodshot eyes from not sleeping, which are actually most of the key behind the success, behind reaching those places.
Yeah, well, I think for me, it's safe to say that one thing is being a photographer, doing your own thing, doing your art, which I still do. And I've sort of separated my business into two. So I do my own thing on sandraåberg.com, and on Sandra Åberg Weddings is definitely a whole team behind, because shooting high-end weddings really requires, it's not a one-person show. It requires a team effort of people, and I could not ever have done it without these guys on the team. So here we have Sergio and Joe and Ksenia and me. And this is the basic foundation of the team. Then we add people whenever we feel it needed.
We have a new videographer.
That's right. We have a new videographer, Michele, on board. So I think for me, it's super important to also say, because I know a lot of photographers, it's like kind of a one-man show that a lot of us run, and it used to be like that for me. I found in the wedding industry, it's been absolutely essential to have a team and to have people with you that you can really rely on. And to that, I have to give a big Oscar special applaud to Sony, because without these guys believing in my crazy ideas and thoughts and whatever we really come up with, I think it's super cool to have Sony. Like, I'm a Sony ambassador, really proud of that. And yeah, I think that that's something that has given me something that I could not have been without.
The thing I have been able to observe from the outside about Sony approached Sandra and offered the possibility to become an ambassador and try the gear. And it's like, what is Sony? Really, to the civilians out there, it's a huge corporation, which we tend to consider as a faceless, soulless entity. But the people in there, in this case, there's Hong from Copenhagen, who's predominantly dealt with Sandra and with me, together with her. have actually really made it so much different. They've added a human dimension, a huge kindness and just trust that has been really kind of help, profound.
I
mean, a form of support and backup, as well as support in the technical sense, and
for all our crazy adventures.
Yeah,
as Indonesia, underwater photography, and all kinds of things.
Mountains, the Alps, wildlife, with equipment, with lenses.
Yeah. And on that note, we might just share a little bit about the gear that we use.
It's not all there.
It's not all there, but this is an overview from packing up for one of our trips. I'm a bit of a girl, so of course there's a little bit of pink stuff as well. But the gear, for you guys that are interested, we do use drones as well. We have Isotta underwater gear. We also have the Sony underwater camera housing. And then we have the Sony lenses and the Sony cameras. And we work also with Profoto lamps, which are awesome. And then we've had the chance to also work a lot with Focus Nordic, which is
Nordic, providing no one specific brand of accessory, but
all kinds of amazing things.
Also incredibly generous and helpful.
So in terms of equipment, this is really what we have on us at all times. I don't think there's a need to really read it out, but you guys can have a look and have a thought. Like, one of my absolute new favorite lenses is the 50 that I'm sure you guys have heard of. And I have to say that, and the A1 has now become the dream team. So you can cut that all down to those two. But in the end, that's really like my preferred shooting style. I've used the 85 as well a lot. Joe, what's your favorites?
I like the 24. I like the 100-400.
Yeah.
Obviously, two massively different lenses, and of course the 50 and the 85. But you usually take them.
They're occupied.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and so what we do when we shoot is we also shoot from different angles, from these different positions, and always combine like a very different story. So for my side of it, I always shoot for the bride's story, and Joe always shoots for the groom's.
Yeah, and to have two very different setups, camera and lens setups, shooting from two different positions with two different viewpoints, but that I have learned to shoot within Sandra's style, and then we edit together. It really creates a depth to the storytelling aspect of that. For example, in a wedding or any kind of event at all, which is a huge part of how you can present work to clients, to reach, to climb in an order of success, because two people with a very different perspective provides literally double the capture coverage,
especially for weddings. I mean,
especially weddings.
I'm aware that there's a lot of other kinds of photographers out there where it doesn't make sense, but for weddings it's really, really valuable to have those different aspects. But so let's jump into it. So today we really wanted to try to go a bit above and beyond. We wanted to share with you what actually goes on behind the scenes, because as I told you before, the glossy magazines doesn't really, it's all cool and there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing bad about it. It's just, it doesn't always do it for me personally. I also like to hear about other photographers, your struggles, what doesn't work, how you actually got the image. I think that's super interesting, and we try to kind of show what we think we can break down our success really to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not everything that appears on the surface, just as the glamour.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you photographers agree that a lot of gritty work goes into photos. But we'll start here. So this is a wedding in south of France that we had the honor to shoot actually for Vogue. We were going to be there to shoot the editorial for Vogue of this wedding.
Yeah, but to specify, it was basically an unwelcome intrusion, because this is a real wedding for real people who, of course, they allowed the magazine to send us to photograph something for their magazine.
I believe that they were also invited as guests as well. Yeah.
But the element of stress, of difficulty of shooting what is an editorial, basically a fashion shoot within a real wedding with guests and a timeline that isn't really negotiable.
That was a big
it's a
lesson.
massive challenge, and there's a lot of there's a lot of lessons.
And so what I really felt like this represented for us personally is that, of course, the glam is not all you see. It's easy to show this image that we managed to get in the 10 minutes we had. But there's a lot of dress and a lot of carrying and a lot of
6 meters of
6
train. That's the part that the trails behind.
Joe has learned a lot about wedding dresses. Anyways, I wanted to show you a few more photos from this beautiful wedding. It truly was incredible. And then we had one shot that we had to get specifically for this editorial.
Yeah.
And it was this shot. And it was of all the girls and the bride. And we had found days before a location that we wanted to shoot at, because we wanted the beautiful background with the ocean. We wanted the sunset behind us, the light right. And it turned out that we weren't allowed to use that spot because last minute because they decided that then you'd have to go away, in which you would have to see things that you were not supposed to see, because then you'd go behind sort of the scenes
backstage of the venue where they had rubbish bins in the back of the kitchen or something.
So we had to really last minute change up the whole plan, figure out now what to do. We needed to use chairs for the girls to sort of some sit and some stand. And those chairs had to be used for the ceremony. So I believe that as I'm shooting family portraits and it's
somewhere
a bit
else,
of a blur somewhere else, Joe is carting chairs with golf carts and setting everything up out here on the rocks. And
no, the chairs went down there by hand.
Okay.
And then the bride and the bridesmaids had to be taken down by a golf cart that the hotel administration weren't really all that happy to give us,
because they needed it too, I guess.
And then it was lucky that they needed the chairs afterwards. So then we got, I don't remember if it was a tractor or a trailer to load everything back on, but by then you were gone somewhere else.
To shoot something else, probably.
Shoot something else, yeah.
I think so. One thing that I think is really important to point out that we do that has increased our success rate really profoundly, I think, is that we have the walkie-talkies.
Oh, yes.
And it does look a bit over the top at the start, where I was feeling a bit like I'm Scandinavian. I was feeling a bit embarrassed to show up there with like walkie-talkies in my ears and looking like a James Bond.
And we originally got little pink, feminine,
of course,
cheap Amazon looking ones.
They were pink.
Yeah. Yes. But they're like air. You don't notice how important they are until you don't have them.
So a huge part of that
timelines,
so a huge part of that is speaking to each other during these big events and actually being able to. So it's usually, for this wedding, it was just Joe and I, because we were shooting the editorial. But at a normal wedding, we're like 2, 3, 4 photographers. and you need to be able to communicate, make sure you're on the same page. Things change all the time at these live events.
Move and send people to different parts and to catch something that's
because even though you've made a plan and you're sort of trying to carry out this plan, you always end up somehow not being able to carry out that plan.
Weddings are very they're very like planned down to the minute, and then nothing goes to plan. So
I think that's one of the, like, we want to really contribute some of the success to is actually walkie-talkie gear. And it might sound a bit weird, but if you are shooting big weddings, if you're interested in shooting weddings, it's something we highly recommend. A golf cart too. And then another thing is, so this shot here specifically shot on the Contax. I love shooting old film, and it's what I wanted to do for this shot. And so it comes down to also knowing your gear a lot, like really knowing what you're shooting with. And now with the Sony mirrorless cameras, I think that has changed profoundly to how it used to be. It used to be a bit more of a struggle to even get eyes clear and the focus and things like that.
Also your particular style and the fine art style relies heavily on shooting at very, very wide apertures, 1.2, 1.4. And before the eye focus capability that the Sony cameras had, that they have, you would take home a lot of blurry photos, or photos that had the focus elsewhere. And your culling process,
Joe is doing the culling.
Yes,
he was also back in the days.
So the culling process is where I have been able to see the difference. That function really, I put it at the number one for the wedding industry. The eye tracking, and the same will then go down with the nature and wildlife, because even before the update, it was still working pretty well with animals. And
no, that's true. No, I think that's definitely something to point out. Has changed a lot, for sure, in my work, in the whole workflow in general for the business. And we made sure that all of our shooters do shoot on Sony cameras to make the editing process easier. And it's just part of our workflow. So the next one that I think is a huge one is the willingness to go above and beyond. So in this particular case, we wanted to do an epic elopement on the Amalfi Coast with this cute couple here. And I think we challenged them a bit on it, but I don't think they'll ever regret it.
No. And see, in this particular shoot, we drove around for quite a while looking for the right place. And if you want to achieve something that is beyond what everyone else is achieving, you've got to put in an effort and do something that the others are not willing to do. So what that means is, in this case,
climb mountains.
You got to get, so the backpack, the frame pack comes out, and we're strapping tables, chairs, cake, food, glasses. It's several trips, and we're driving up a dirt track in our van that ends up actually getting busted, getting broken on the road, because you shouldn't drive on that kind of road with that kind of vehicle. They had to come get us with a 4x4 to fix it that night.
Yeah, that's right. We were all stuck on the mountain.
So
the whole team.
You're risking a lot to get to where you want to be. And
also for this, I also really want to point out that it's super important to shoot, like to put in the effort to shoot what you really want to to be doing. So in this case, we really wanted to do much more elopements and kind of shoots around the world with just more of a private scene, because we have those very big weddings and they do take a lot out of you. So we had the need to kind of have those more intimate weddings in which we could put in a lot of our own effort and kind of.
Yeah. And everything you give in that setting it's received directly. Where in a big wedding, it dissipates and it spreads out through the crowd and the massive venue. Yeah. So when you have a couple for an elopement or a very small wedding like that Caribbean wedding last year, you're able to see and you can give directly to your client.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we wanted to actually show that this is something we can do. We also wanted to show that we're willing to do it. We're willing to climb mountains. And so we set up this shoot to kind of put that point across, because I always believe that whatever you want to be doing, you have to show. Like, you have to be able as a photographer to show the work you want to have. And that's how I've built a lot of my career. If I didn't have the images, I would create them so that I could get those couples and get those clients, whatever it would be, like couples or other people. And so here we have it. Joe's hard work for dragging stuff up. Happens that since I met Joe, it seems like we're climbing a lot of mountains, which is what he loves to do in his spare time. And I've come to love to do with cameras. And I think an important point is also to like do stuff that you really enjoy. And I think I speak for a lot of photographers that if you're really there and present with what you're doing, you're going to create work that's amazing. I saw some of the others, amazing, talented photographers speaking the other days. And I thought that that's such a really, really important thing, that when you love what you do, the work will show itself. Like, you can see it in the work. I mean, I looked at it from the macro, sorry. And the sports photography is all incredible because the passion is there. So I think that's something that's very, very important. Here we have behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Blood, sweat, and tears. This is Joe dragging, I believe it's chairs and tables strapped to your backpack.
Yeah.
I think there was a cake in there as well. And I mean, we all carried stuff. I think I carried all the camera gear. We had goats in the way.
Trips. Yeah, we took a few trips.
Yeah. I think it was about a 30-minute hike up, though, no?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe less. It was probably at least 3 or 4 trips. It
depends how much you were carrying.
Yeah, it depends what you carry.
But again, it's about that like willingness to go beyond what is expected. And here's a little in-action shot.
And then afterwards, packing the van, packing things back in the van, and then we ended up waiting for a while before somebody came to get us, because we had to fix the hoses of the radiator that got ripped off on a rock.
Yeah. Well, and I think also, again, it's a lot about the team effort for us. Working with the right people that are also willing to go out of their way to make something epic is really, really important. And I mean, here, this whole team had to travel actually in the back of the van to make it up the mountain.
Yeah.
You know, so you have some incredibly fun stories at the end of the day, which adds to the joy of being a photographer and really doing what you like. I think that's half the fun, especially on the hard days. So this is another aspect that is super important. I think you'd be the right one to kind of tell that one.
Oh, well, how you show up. I think I'm realizing now we see how you shouldn't do this, because working a lot in Italy or south of France, sometimes you see, or we've even worked with people that don't take it as seriously as we do, to show up in a way that is appropriate, but as important as showing up, meaning how you dress, how you present, and how you carry yourself, is huge. It makes the difference between being part of the event and therefore you're welcome, you're participating. You shouldn't be too invasive because it is a private event for somebody else. But if you show up and carry yourself in a respectful and in the appropriate way, you'll get to participate much, much better. So you still need to be yourself and have fun with it. Sometimes we goof off massively. And in some cases, we have to be stone cold serious.
It also, I think at the end, it also comes down to the clients that you're with.
Yeah. So get to know your clients, and you will in the booking process. You try to get to know them as best you can so that you know what's going to be expected of you, what's going to be permitted. Also
what their dress codes are. So we always ask specifically, what's the dress codes for the different event? Like this one that we're showing here was a 3-day event. So we have 3 different sets of outfits that fit the actual theme for each day. And it's super important to kind of show up and be part of the event and part of the group of people that are there. I think a lot of times we've gotten a lot of compliments on that, which seems like a really basic thing, but it does make a big difference. It makes the guests relate to you differently, that you show up kind of also being part of the event, but still there to do your job, to serve. Yeah.
Instead of being a voyeur, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even standing out in a way that can seem a bit harsh. Like if you come at jeans at an event like this, it's obvious that you're going to stand out.
Yeah. It's also somehow a bit disrespectful,
It is.
You're not.
Yeah. And so this specific event was kind of a funny story because we are there.
This is Ravello in the Amalfi Coast.
Yeah, and we're there and we're hearing all this gossip about Matt Damon being in Ravello, and we're here to work. We're just going to do our thing.
And that kind of thing happens a lot in Ravello.
Yeah, it does.
Tom Hanks or whoever comes.
It's true. But we weren't really paying attention to that at all. We were super focused on the work. And once we show up to the actual, I think it's the rehearsal, so it's the day before, we realized that all this gossip was actually about this particular wedding that we were now shooting and being part of. And it was just like a fun story. And I think, again, that whole part of like being part of that, like becoming part of the wedding, participating with them, showing up dressed well, presented well, not just dressed well, but presented well as a team. Everybody's introduced, everybody knows who everybody is. And by the end of these weddings, I feel like we know the family, right? We know the ins and the outs of the families. Well, we didn't know before because we ask a lot of questions before.
This job actually has a massive, I think if you're doing it well in weddings, but any kind of, it has like a psychologist aspect because we're frequently in the middle of something that is potentially problematic, and then things happen there that they didn't want to happen. People get into spaces they aren't happy with, and so
it's an emotional days, and there's families gathered, and there's new families gathered. Yeah, exactly.
So there's a lot of kind of just.
It's true. We should have a psychology degree as well.
Sitting down with people, getting people comfortable, calming them down, but it means that you hear their stories, you hear their complaining, you hear their rejoicing, you learn little secrets. I suppose it's a little bit like what you hear taxi drivers talking about that people get in and tell them their life stories.
Yeah,
you kind of see that a little bit.
Yeah. And again, this is like these kind of weddings that we've shot quite a few of. It's also about who you're showing up for. At the end of the day, like this wedding, as you can see, you get to know them. And sometimes you don't really see them for who they are until the day, but you jive with that. Like these specific clients here, I don't know if you guys can imagine, but they were so much fun that I don't think I've ever laughed more at a wedding. This is the bride and the groom in the middle, and stepmom and dad. And honestly, these guys were just hilarious.
But it was a huge production of a wedding, potentially and actually incredibly high stress and demand.
Yeah. We ended up calling in.
We called in a third photographer.
Yeah.
And even though you're having fun, you're still expected to fully cover and provide the full service. So match what you're going to do. Yeah.
And I think here's a good example of us showing up. I mean, they're two very different ways of showing up. It, of course, depends on the day.
They look kind of similar, but actually they weren't.
No. And also you show up matching the attire of the event, the outfit. And it's just kind of a way to show the venue as well, how we do that. And this is just one example. I think we have many different, I think each photographer has about 5 outfits that we kind of alternate. Because if it's a beach wedding, you don't show up in suit and tie, so always kind of match the wedding and the style and the feel of your clients.
Many times we've bought an outfit for a third shooter the night before, the day before.
Especially at the beginning. Now I think we don't need to anymore. They all have the outfits.
No, but as insignificant as it might seem, and even superficial, it actually makes a difference that you fit in. And I think it also shows that you make an effort to respect their day, their place, their whole situation.
Yeah. And this is just another fun shoot from that one. Yeah. So another thing that I think is contribute to our success, I really do think that it's like, and we've talked about it already, but it's also be willing to go further and sort of beyond and out of your way. Not because you have to, but because you want to. And I think that's something that we have found makes us really happy and makes our clients or whoever we're shooting for really happy. Just the willingness to do that and kind of show up like that, I think is super important. These guys were from California, and they'd spent their whole life. I think the guys, they would describe themselves as beach bums. So beach bums sounds worse when you say it that way, as people who are always barefoot in the sand where it's hot, and they wanted to do something very, very different. And so they chose to come to Italy in the Alps and elope. There was just the two of them on the top of a mountain. And so we chose the area. Unfortunately, again, we were supposed to go somewhere else on this day, but the weather didn't allow that. And we changed our plan. We went to another place. We actually used a ski lift to get to the top and then hiked a bit. Again, with the backpack came out, and we carried firewood, some deer skins as rugs. These little bottles.
We bought some gifts for the couple at the tourist shop at the bottom of the ski lift slope, and they happened to sell schnapps And the guy in there happened to give me a little introduction to their product, and they had more of for her and for him flavors. So we got them a his and a hers, and we didn't tell them at the time. We had, I think, already a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
We had to carry up extra clothing and head torches, because we knew that once we were up there, to get the best light, as is always going to be the case, you're heading into sunset. And if you're on the top of a mountain and the ski lifts are closing, you're going to hike down. So actually we had crampons. We had, just because walking down ski runs at nighttime, it's going to get icy and slippery.
We also had like cover-ups to keep our clients warm.
We
because
had gear, yeah. We
were scared that they were going to get
to,
really cold.
Yeah, in between shooting, we cover them.
Yeah.
But actually remember that these guys were tough, and they didn't really want it that much.
Even though they're from the California sun, I think they thought it was epic and really exotic. So they were willing to kind of suffer a bit of cold, knowing that it wasn't for a full winter. But yeah, for this shoot, we dragged up firewood. We lit a fire after they'd said their vows on the top of this mountain. And we'd found all the locations. I mean, we put in all the work beforehand, and they really trusted us to kind of just go with whatever we had in mind as well. Actually, the bride in this photo is also a photographer, and I think she just wanted sort of the freedom of enjoying the day. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So she wanted to just kind of enjoy the day rather than being worried about it. And here's Joe giving them the little bottles as a congratulations after they've said their vows. And it was really, really a cute moment. And sort of, again, that to point out, like, you really get back what you give. And for us, that's super important to give as much as we possibly can. And sometimes at weddings, the team, sometimes when weddings are tough going, because there are weddings that are really hard and kind of dragging out, and you feel like you just want to go home, that's when we really, both of us are like on the team, gather everybody, and we're like, nope, we keep giving, we keep showing up, we do even more now. When it gets hard, we keep going. And I think for every wedding photographer out there, you know that at some point you just kind of lose your power. And also if you're on the second or third day, you really, really, and 2 hours of sleep, you want to kind of give up somewhere around here. Yeah. But I think that's like.
But doing all of that, thinking through, providing, thinking ahead with the gift, for example, you don't need to give gifts. We don't usually give them a gift.
It depends on the circumstance and what you can add.
Doing all of that is really like, it is your gym, it is your workout, it is what makes you stronger. And then people will see that in you. And that's why they'll trust you, I think. You know, you see a couple like that, they ask no questions. They showed no doubt.
And when it got dark and we told them that the ski lift was closed and we were going to hike down, they just went, okay, do you know the way? And I looked at Joe and I was like, you know the way, right? And he's like, yes, of course I know the way. Yeah. And so I think it was like 45-minute hike down. So it wasn't too bad, but still, I mean, in a wedding dress, that requires quite some trust. I felt kind of amazed, you know? So it was just a fun, and here's me behind the scenes covered in the snow. And these are the photos you get out of it, which at the end of the day, I think is so worth it and such a privilege to get to do this kind of work. Another example is this one.
Go beyond, above and beyond. This is again the Amalfi Coast, Ravello. Arrived late for some reason. We didn't get to bed until about 4 a.m. And Sandra had convinced the bride to be up before sunrise on her wedding day to do a boudoir shoot
Yeah.
at sunrise, because she knew that the light there is spectacular at sunrise. So on 2 hours sleep, you go and do a boudoir shoot that was a gift for the groom, for the husband to be. It was going to be a surprise gift for him.
I think, yeah, and also in this, like the trust that your clients are willing to give you. But for me, it's also knowing that I can show up and perform. And as you can see on all the photos, I've just put the details of what it's shot at, because if you're interested, you can see it. But to show up here, knowing your gear, knowing what you want to get, because you cannot at 5 a.m, I think this was 5:30, have the bride really suffer too much of your not being sure. Like, you really kind of have to show up with a certain confidence that you may or may not have to get the shot.
And she didn't have to do this.
No,
you didn't have to do it. The bride didn't have to do it, hadn't asked or chosen to do it beforehand.
Yeah, and it wasn't something that was included in the package or in the contract or anything. It was something that I knew could be spectacular. And I asked her if she was willing. And because I told her that I know that the sunrise comes up behind the mountains out at the pool, there will be no one at the pool, and it's going to be amazing. And she was like, all right, let's do it. I trust you. We're going to do it. So here's the unedited version, and the edited, again, that is to say, you got to know your gear. You got to know how you want to shoot it. You got to know what
it's capable of.
Yeah.
Because the Sonys are particularly good at bringing back underexposed, and therefore for shooting backlit. And
which is something that I love. I mean, most of my work
style,
is backlit.
Yes, backlit at a huge aperture. And when your gear can do that, you don't need to be so obsessed with making sure that your settings are perfect, because between post-production and the automatisms,
and also a bit of, on 1 hour of sleep, you're a bit in a haze. So it's good to kind of know that your gear can outperform you when your brain is foggy. Then we had this idea, and again, I think a huge thank you goes out to Sony for believing in this idea. We're very passionate about the oceans and plastic in the ocean. So we wanted to go to Indonesia and do this shoot underwater with this girl wrapped in plastic as a part of a project. And this is us. We're very pretty like that. Anyways, this is the photo. It's also the photo behind us, because it is something that really represents something for us, I think, in which we're doing something for ourselves, as well as creating beautiful work. You're also willing to go the step deeper, willing to dig into your creativity, especially, I mean, face your fears. I mean, we spent a few weeks. Joe is a free diver. I had to learn how to free dive in order to take the photos, because I didn't want to do it with the oxygen and the bubbles. So learning how to free dive was a big step in that. Took about over a year, and I think a few tries, and I'm still moderately not great. But I think, like, really facing those fears and be willing to, like, tap into what you dream about as a photographer. I mean, if we're not doing that, then what are we really doing with our time?
I mean, this wasn't even just a photography project. This was part of something bigger. You talk about facing your fears. We took off for Indonesia totally unprepared, and for
what do you mean? We're always prepared.
For this plastic ocean project.
Yes.
That was to become maybe something of a charity project, maybe something of we were going to make it into a non-profit organization. we had all these ideas that are still kicking around, still moving forward, some of them that culminated for now with publishing a book, a children's book. All really things that are quite kind of daunting to just face.
Yeah, it's true. And also when you don't know where something is headed, it's almost even scarier. And I think as photographers, that's actually what we really have to embrace and like step into those moments of uncertainty and without 100% knowing what that's going to look like. Here's a shot of Joe. I think it's very beautiful, romantic. It looked a lot more like this. And I think that's what it actually felt like. It was a huge struggle. It was very heavy to be in the clothes with water. We're trying to get these Indonesians to actually understand what we're trying to do with limited English and this massive current. So the boat kept getting away from where we were. And I think at some point Joe was so furious that he's literally yelling at them to come back with the boat because he's just exhausted. Yeah. And I mean, here's a really great swimmer. So I am needless to say that I felt like I was drowning as well. Yeah. So, I mean, you have to get out of the comfort zone.
Yeah.
And there's a few behind the scenes just from the shot from before, because this girl is so heavy, weighed down with the plastic that it was so hard for her. It's just a free diving instructor, Kate, in these photos, and she was struggling a lot to move and to make this happen. And so Joe actually had to pull her down by the ankles as she's like holding her nose to kind of equalize, because he's pulling her down quite far so that she will float back up and I can get the shot where the plastic is in the right way. So, I mean, as you all know, it's a struggle.
It really is about doing all these things that make you uncomfortable becomes what drives you forward to whichever direction you want to go, to whichever goal you want to reach.
Yeah. And also daring to step out of those things. I think another thing that we wanted to kind of, I think we're towards the end, but we wanted to really say is like the ability to adapt and embrace. So we got this opportunity through a wedding planner that we work with a lot.
Which goes back to people as well as all this discomfort, is look for the people that you vibe with, that you work well with. Sometimes you might have a dream to work with an idol, with someone you look up to, and then you get that opportunity and maybe you don't have the personal vibe for that to be successful or fruitful. But what I've seen is that our growth or our best opportunities have come through good relationships with the people that we work well with, that we share something with, that in terms of vision, in terms of generosity.
Yeah, and just a personal connection, I think, is important. So in this case, Sean Charles is an incredible wedding planner. And we got the chance to work with him on several occasions. And he then had to do this shoot for Disney and asked us to help him, which was a huge privilege, really. Mm-hmm. We just happened to have all of our kids at this time. And we had birthdays, I believe, coming up. And
we had a birthday there.
Yeah, and we weren't able to actually travel for this. And it was the beginning of COVID times as well.
Yeah.
It wasn't locked down at the time, but it was before that.
No, it was after the first lockdown.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was in August.
Yeah. And so we had to do these photos, and we decided, so we had to shoot before the park opened. So this is at 4 a.m. in the morning. I think you can tell that Joe is a tiny bit tired. And we were traveling with the whole gang. So this is our kids. We have 3 of them together. And for anybody with kids, I think that you don't need to say anything else. Yeah. When you're working,
got a babysitter.
Of course, we got a babysitter for work.
Yeah, but not that much at the time. We had them with us in one way or another.
Not for the actual work
for
times,
work.
which was 4 in the morning.
But
We had a
yeah,
sitter.
we finished
But
work by,
I think we're done at 9.
well, we were back by 10. So we'd have a babysitter for come at 4 in the morning and then leave at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And
then we got to work.
And then we got back to work. But it was cool because we adapt and embrace what we had, and we had this amazing opportunity to go to Disneyland.
Which was on our own account, because of course with the kids that was something separate, but as well as the work commitment.
So we merged it.
We sort of merged the two together. And I think in life and in photography, if you can merge what you love, which is of course our children, and what we love about photography, if you can try to merge those things, it's not always possible. But in this case, I think that we managed to do fairly well, although I believe that in the plane we looked at each other and said,
never
what have
again.
we done?
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually also never again. But again, it's like embracing these things, and for us today to kind of share, like,
oh yes, kids had to come from 2 different countries to reach France.
Yeah,
we had kids coming from Denmark, from Italy, and all meeting and then all going back in the different directions, and then we had to regroup. No, a lot of work goes into these things when you have kids. And here just a few more behind the scenes. Again, I think it really takes you from those glossy covers that I know that I've been very famous for. For the people that know of me, I think that's more what people think of me. I've had people meet me and then go, oh, I really had expected something else. Yeah. Which is, I think they've expected high heels and something like that, which I don't think I ever wear. I mean, very rarely. And that's okay, but it's also important to kind of merge that, like what your visual is more and more with who you really are. And I think that has been a huge learning curve for me personally, from those glossy magazine covers to really stepping more into like, this is actually what I love to do. This is really who I am. And I think a big part of that has been to just embrace the fear of really showing up 100%. Even today, you know, it's a much easier to kind of show up with everything looking glossy than showing up with things as they are. But this is definitely as they are. And this is a lot like what we're like. There's a lot of hours on the road. And this particular time, I think we rented a camper van in France for 2-3 weddings and personal work on the road as well. Yeah. So yeah, in essence, a lot of stuff goes down on the road. It isn't always fancy. But I'm sure a lot of you guys know that as well. And I'm sure a lot of you live that way. Just for me, it was important to also point out that these pastel colors has a behind the scenes. And again, thanks to Sony, I think that we're here today, really. So that's a huge thanks for that to them. Switching to mirrorless cameras, I think whether it's Sony or not Sony, it has been a game changer for me, and something that I highly recommend you try if you haven't. So yeah, I think we also want to thank you guys for being here today, whether you're on with us live or you'll watch this later. If you have any questions, you can send them on Instagram. You can send them on mail, whatever way you want. I think maybe you can keep asking questions in the chat on YouTube, and then we'll answer there for sure as well. And I think there is a few questions, so I'll just see if we'll answer them now. And anything else that is, because we don't want to sit here and wait around, I think you just ask us. Feel free, connect, because it'd be so cool for us to see your work as well. Really, Thomas?
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Loud and clear.
Perfect. So we have received two questions here, guys. One from Awesome Kiris says, hey guys, if you could bring two lenses for a wedding shoot, what would you bring? Interested in an answer from both of you.
Okay. Well, if I have to answer first, I'll definitely bring the new 50 1.2. I'll sleep with that one at night. And then which other one would I bring? If I can only bring two, is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah, that was the question.
Okay. Then I'd bring the 50, and then I think I'd actually bring the 16 to 30. No, I'm not sure what I would bring. I can't just bring two lenses. Maybe I would bring the 35 and the 50. If I could only bring two, I think I'd bring those two.
35 or the 16 to 35?
It's just because you want the 35.
No.
No, I think I'd bring the 16 to 35, depending again on the scene. But I like to have those wide shots because personally, I think they work really well on walls or any kind of thing like that. And the 50 I'll use for any type of portraits. So if I had those two lenses, I'd know that I could kind of get away with both and capturing both. So that's definitely what I would go for. What about you?
I would either, if I can't use the lenses you've chosen.
Yeah, can't. maybe you can.
If I will make it more interesting, and I can't, because I would probably choose those two lenses, 16 to 35, because I use that lens predominantly at 16 millimeters, and it gives a very dramatic kind of almost fisheye. It gets distorted, but if you use it in a specific way, you can get really cool images of buildings with people in the foregrounds, and that's something I like. And then I would the 50 or the 85, but if I can't choose the two lenses you've mentioned, I would go with the 24 wide, and the 85. No, I would go with the 70 to 200.
So kind of more close-ups.
Yeah, because I go very, very wide. Even the 24 is an working lens, and then the 70 to 200 allows you to snipe.
Be a sniper.
Yeah, you can snipe pictures of people and things happening from a distance, so they're not aware of you there.
It's also what you do a lot.
Lens.
Yeah. And it's also what you do a lot of, at, for example, weddings. Like Joe usually stands back because they look at me, and I don't have a lot of places to go. I'm kind of stuck there, and Joe can move around and kind of get those more candid photos.
It's kind of like a sucker punch effect, because people they always look better when they don't realize they're being photographed or filmed.
What he's saying is that he gets the better photos.
Often you do that way just because their attention is on Sandra, and it makes them look more natural. If you're just to the side and off, they're not worried about you. You see a more natural, unposed version of the same picture.
Yeah.
And we swap that around quite a bit, right? Sometimes then I come in and looking to look at me, which is another huge benefit of working with two people.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have other questions?
I have an add-on question for that previous question, just for my own curiosity. Being that you shoot on Sony, we do have the function to crop the sensor, Super 35 mode. Is that something that you guys use with prime lenses to get more of a focal length on it, or is that something you don't do at all?
We haven't really used that. No. I mean, I know.
Also, we have the fortune of having a lot of lenses available.
Of course.
Yeah, so then you'd probably rather switch to a different one rather than doing that.
I've used it when I had to. For some reason, I had the 135, and I needed to photograph from way too far away. I couldn't get in. This was in Ravello, and I was up on a shelf, up on a thing. And I needed to, so I set that up. But that's the only time.
But it's not something we like use in general, I don't think.
No. Awesome. Next question is from Kyle Meyer, and he's asking, what's left on your bucket list of photography, and is there anything out of your comfort zone that you would want to try?
Oh my goodness, my bucket list is so long that it will be another hour, I think. Definitely to mention a few things, both photography related and not. I think for me, I have a dream of writing. So really writing a book or writing something not related at all to photography, actually, but more of a personal journey. And as well as that, really doing a lot more of adventure photography is on my list. As you've seen, like Joe and I have done quite a few. One time we did like a shoot in the mountains. We stayed there for 2 weeks to shoot deer and to photograph deer, I should say, because otherwise that's misunderstood, but to photograph deer. And to really, I think like on my bucket list is a lot more adventures, a lot more nature photography, and also documentaries. So now with the Sony gear, I think that's really allowed us to be super creative, and we're getting a lot more into the video side of it as well, which is why we got a videographer on board the team as well, to also edit, because I mean, there's limited time in a day, but the bucket list is long. So I think we keep working towards that as well.
I think that the Vogue cover experience has made it so your concept of bucket list isn't really one shot.
That's true.
Yeah. You know, it becomes more adopting a lifestyle more than achieving a sort of single shot.
Yeah, I think that as well is the bucket list item in and of itself is to actually live more in the moment and kind of enjoy it rather than aiming for a goal. Because, and oftentimes in like our little team, there's the comment of like, watch out, so it's not just another Vogue cover. Which kind of reminds us always to kind of enjoy what we're in rather than aiming for the end result, which I think that photographers, because we show up with the end result, is like what we tend towards. So yeah, I think I'll leave you on that note with kind of like a bit
avoidant, but but accurate.
Yeah.
So yeah, Kyle says, sorry, I was just going to say, Kyle said, yeah, let's go adventure. Come hang when the borders open up and bring the Sonys.
Yay, we will, Kyle. For sure.
And Hung is also keen to join in, so that'll be a fun time.
Yay.
Cool.
Well, thank you guys so much for today. We truly appreciate it. Any questions, or even just connect with us. I think Instagram is probably the best place, but we have Facebook as well. Yeah, so do reach out. Any questions, anything, you're welcome to always reach out to us and just to connect. So thank you so much for today.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, guys. It was a great seminar. And thanks to everyone who tuned in live. We'll see you next time.
All right.